Hello, welcome back to Chat About It, Don't Shout About It with me, Rachel, the Queen of the Woke, as crowned by one of my haters. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to my channel. Thank you to everyone who has subscribed already. I couldn't do it without you. Now, today is Sunday, and that means it's time for Doctor Who. Thank you to everyone who has voted for today's choice, Spearhead from Space. If you would like to actually take part in the vote as to which Doctor we will discuss on a Sunday, then make sure you are subscribed to the channel, as I release a poll every Saturday, and you can vote on the community page for it. Now, Spearhead from Space was actually written by Robert Holmes. It was directed by Derek Martinez and produced by Derek Sherwin. It was a 4-part serial, which at that point in time was actually a rarity, and it averaged 8.2 million viewers in consolidation for all 4 episodes. They aired between the 3rd to the 24th of January 1970, and it's actually the first outing of Jon Pertwee as the Doctor, and it reintroduces Nicholas Courtney as Brigadier Lethbridge Stewart in one of the roles of the companion, and Caroline John also joins as a companion, playing Liz Shaw. Now, the Doctor has been exiled to Earth and was forced to regenerate at the end of the War Games. He lands on Earth trying to gain control of his regeneration and is taken to hospital, where he reunites with the Brigadier and unit. He teams up with them and Liz Shaw to investigate the mysterious goings on at the autoplastics factory. He discovers that Nestine Consciousness has used a Spearhead force to land on Earth in bid to use the Autons to wipe out the human race and colonize the planet. So this episode saw a load of firsts. It's the first time the Doctor is made scientific advisor. We see his binary cardiovascular system. Nestine and the Autons appear for the first time, and it's also the very first ever episode of Doctor Who to air in colour. Now, I can almost guarantee 100% that I'm going to miss something here, so please make sure you are chatting away in the comments below to discuss what I've discussed and what I've missed. Now, Spearhead from Space is still to this day my favourite episode of Jon Pertwee because it plays into my fear of mannequins. Now, I don't scare easily, but the Autons for me are more the hide behind your pillow type of moment. One of the best lines in this episode is when the Doctor and Liz are at Madame Tussauds and the Doctor says, "It's funny how their eyes seem to follow you." Now, thanks for that, Doctor. Just remind me as to one of the main reasons why I don't like mannequins and dolls in the first place. Now, I have very few downs in this episode because the plot is actually fairly consistent, and questions are answered, and they are tied up pretty well, actually. Now, I mentioned earlier that this episode is the first episode in colour. Do I have any subscribers or viewers who are old enough to remember what it was like to see the transition from black and white into colour? Please leave a comment below. One thing I notice on this watch through is that we don't get to see the regeneration. At the end of the War Games, we see Patrick Troughton's face twisting and contorting, and that's it. He spins away and you don't actually see the changeover, and that doesn't actually occur again until Doctors 8 to 9, even though Stephen Moffat does show them later. And well, it's just a minor detail, but I would have liked to have seen that. Having said that, I am aware that it may not have been possible, so I understand why they kept it very simple. The thing that I like about this forced regeneration, though, is that the Doctor crash lands to Earth along with the Spearhead force, so it really introduces the Doctor with a bang. It leaves the viewer questioning what exactly the plastic mannequins truly are and what or who Channing is. Now, just quickly, whilst I mentioned Channing, he is truly creepy as anything, a very waxy face. His face doesn't move much, nor does he blink much at all. That shot of him behind the glass looking at the Brigadier, it just makes me cringe thinking about it. It's so cringeworthy. Oh my goodness, don't even go there. Exiling the Doctor to Earth means that the viewer and the writers knew that there would be an Earthbound Doctor. This would mean that they would need another character to latch onto with no space travel. So they brought back the Brigadier, who had appeared in the Web of Fear and the Invasion during the Patrick Troughton era. He was brought back as the Earthbound adversary to the Doctor. So it was someone who the viewers could actually link onto because we already know who he is. In addition to that, they introduced a scientist, Liz Shaw, as well for the female representation. Now, I will say that I love both of these companions very much. I do, however, much prefer the Brigadier as the companion as opposed to Liz. And I think the reason for that is because Liz has the same sort of smarts as the Doctor, whereas the Brigadier has military smarts instead of scientific ones. So he is able to ask the questions to the Doctor that the viewer is also trying to ask. So he can get them for the viewer. And also, the Brigadier, in my opinion, creates more friction between him and the Doctor as opposed to Liz. For example, the Brigadier wants the help of the Doctor, and in order to ensure that, he keeps the TARDIS key, to which the Doctor tricks Liz into getting it back so he can try and escape, to no avail. It's no secret, John Pertwee isn't my favourite Doctor from the get-go, but he is very clearly the Doctor. He brings in some of the sly impishness that we see with Patrick Troughton in the first episode. He does lose that as time goes on, and he becomes his own Doctor, but the snatching and hugging of the shoes to pulling a fast one with the key, and his love for showing off of his new face and his appreciation of it is shaking off the vestiges of his last incarnation. And we do actually see the new Doctor start to come in with the style of John Pertwee when he steals the clothes and makes a break for it in someone else's car from the hospital, to the point where he actually wanted to keep the car that he stole. But obviously he couldn't, he had to give it back. And obviously, this is how we end up with Bessie. So we get the main reveal of the Autons after the great cliffhanger of the Doctor getting shot, to which he puts himself into a self-induced coma. How they go about doing that is great. It's important to set up the Autons with the autoplastic factory. The music and seeing the doll's head being made tells you that this is where the problem actually is. And I remember when I first saw it, and it put the sense of dread in me, knowing my dislike for dolls and mannequins. It was important to have Ransom walking about in there showing his suspicion, because that also gets the viewer to question it as well, especially with his run-ins with the waxy, unblinking staff and Channing. So it also explains the reveal of the Auton that we get walking through the woods searching for this signal. Now, what do you think of it? To me, it's terrifying. I'm convinced personally that AI robots are taking over the world anyway. So a plastic robot mannequin that doesn't die plays into that fear. Now, don't even get me started on when they brought back the Autons for the Christopher Eccleston episode in 2005. Although they were not as scary because they didn't have eye holes. So you are left questioning throughout the episode to think what the Auton is actually looking for. And you think that's pretty much what it is doing until it unveils later that it has an additional weapon in its plastic hand at the cliffhanger of episode 2, Poor Ransom. What is so powerful that you can vaporize someone into non-existence with? Channing just said destroy, total destruction, which is actually really great because it actually sets it apart from the Daleks. And the Autons aren't as used as the Daleks. And the only thing really about that, though, is I do actually wonder why they didn't destroy Mrs. Seeley. Now, the Autons tried to retrieve the energy unit meteorite, and they fail, which allows for the unit to take it into their custody and thus for the Doctor to investigate it. Now, before I continue with that, I just want to say that General Scobie as a doppelganger, or a facsimile as it was called, was creepy. The idea that the Auton Scobie has also turned the real Scobie into a statue and placed it at Madame Tussauds would be my idea of hell. How terrifying is the idea behind making plastic figures at the Wax Museum come to life and move because they were plastic Autons? So the Doctor deduces that inside this meteorite it is some kind of consciousness, which we later find out it's part of the Nestene consciousness. We also discovered that the Nestene can communicate telepathically, which is why they can control the Autons. Now, the resolution of this story is set up early enough in episode 4. It wasn't too rushed. The episode allows for the invasion to start and the Autons to go on a rampage, and it's a good amount of time to show what it is that they can do. Sometimes there is a risk, I would say, of letting it go on too long, but I think because they were dealing with everyday objects, they may very well have caused a lot of contention if they had gone on for too long. The Doctor creates this device that would destroy the Autons and the Nestine consciousness, which it does, but not before he pulled some of the funniest faces I've ever seen John pull as he takes on the tentacles of the Nestine consciousness. And I have a question for you now. How terrifying is the idea behind something like aliens coming to colonize Earth and take us over? Now, the thing that I really like about Spearhead from Space is that the ideas behind the story are very simple ones and they can play into the public's phobias. And it certainly played into one of mine. Whilst the story was being filmed, there were strikes going on at the time. So that meant it had to be filmed on film, which actually, in the long run, made it a benefit for it. It made it easy for it to be converted to Blu-ray, and it was generally the first in a lot of many ways when bringing it in for the modern audiences. It certainly had a lot of firsts. The one that I just mentioned and the ones that I talked about at the beginning, it also comes full circle because this is my first official TV foray into the classics on this particular channel, although I have actually seen a lot of them. I give it 8 out of 10 for the start of the Third Doctor. It was simple and the conclusion was obtainable. What did you think about Spearhead from Space? Chat about it, don't shout about it. Don't forget to place your vote in the current poll running on the community page. Like the video if you would like to, and subscribe. Thanks very much for watching. Bye-bye.